Okay, let's unpack this. Navigating Amazon today is way more complex than just putting your product up and hoping people find it.
Oh, absolutely.
Advertising is essential, we all know that. But there's this powerful, almost invisible force at work, how Amazon's system doesn't just see your performance right now, but how it remembers everything you've done in the past.
Exactly. It's not just about the current bid you place or, the click you just got. It's about the long-term algorithmic perception Amazon builds up.
Based on history.
Yeah, based on months of historical performance data for your product, your ads, even your whole seller account.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are plunging into a stack of sources focused on a critical yet often misunderstood concept in Amazon PPC, ranking memory mechanisms.
And this isn't just like technical jargon for the super nerds.
No, not at all. Understanding how Amazon's advertising system remembers past performance directly impacts your ad visibility, your costs, and ultimately your long-term success.
We're talking about something affecting millions of sellers, billions in ad spend. It's huge.
So our mission in this deep dive is to take the detailed information in our source material and really break it down.
Right. We want to unpack exactly what ranking memory is, how it works, what makes it stronger or weaker.
And crucially, how you can strategically build positive memory to gain a real advantage.
And just to be clear, we're pulling only from the information provided in these sources, covering everything related to this topic, piece by piece.
Okay, let's dive right in. Let's define this core idea. What exactly is ranking memory in Amazon PPC?
Simply put, it's the phenomenon where Amazon's advertising system remembers and uses past performance data from your ads to influence how those ads rank now and in the future. It's your advertising history getting baked into the algorithm's decisions.
Okay, so Amazon remembers, but for how long? Because I know the raw data reports, they only stick around for a certain period, right?
That's a really crucial distinction. So Amazon's system retains the detailed raw performance data for specific shorter periods.
Like what?
Okay, so for sponsored products, the data is available via the API for 95 days now. That's up from 60.
95, got it.
Sponsored brands, it's 60 days. And sponsored display is 65 days.
Okay.
And those granular reports in the ad console, like your search term reports, they typically expire after 60 to 90 days.
Oh.
But here's the key. The influence of that historical performance, the algorithmic ranking memory itself, that can persist for up to 180 days.
Wow, 180 days, half a year.
A full 6 months of influence, yeah. Even if you can't pull up the super detailed raw data for that whole period in every single report.
Wow, okay, 180 days of influence. So does performance from 6 months ago count as much as performance from last week?
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
Amazon uses what our sources describe as a power law decay model.
Power law decay.
Sounds fancy.
It just means the influence of older historical data diminishes exponentially over time. It fades out.
So recent stuff matters more.
A lot more. The most recent performance is weighted the most heavily.
How much more heavily are we talking? Get this. The most recent 30 days of performance account for approximately 60% of the total weighting in ad ranking calculations.
60% just from the last month.
60%, it's a huge chunk.
Yeah.
Then the data from days 31 all the way back to 180 collectively makes up the other 40%.
Okay.
But its influence decays, drops off at a rate of about 8 to 12% per week.
8 to 12% per week decay. Does that rate change?
Yeah, the exact rate can vary a bit depending on the product category. Some decay faster than others.
Okay, so consistency over time is good, builds that 40%, but recent performance is absolutely king for that 60%. Can you give an example of how consistency builds up that weight?
Sure. The sources give a good one. Let's say you maintain a solid click-through rate, a CTR, of 0.8% consistently for 90 days.
Okay, 3 months at 0.8%.
That performance history has 2.3 times more cumulative weight in the ranking memory compared to achieving that same 0.8% CTR, but only sustaining it for 30 days.
2.3 times the weight for 90 days versus 30. So consistency really compounds.
Exactly. It builds significant algorithmic trust over time.
But you also mentioned there's a recency bias, like really recent spikes matter too.
Absolutely. Despite that long-term weighting, there's a strong bias toward very recent success. Ads hitting a CTR of 1.2% or higher.
1.2% or more.
Just in the last 7 days. Can receive 50% more impressions than ads that had the exact same average CPR over the full 180 days.
50% more impressions just for a good week.
It shows Amazon trying to balance that long-term history, that trust, with immediate real-time relevant signals. Who's hot right now?
Got it. Memory up to 180 days, decays over time. Last 30 days is 60% weight. Last 7 days gives a potential quick boost. So what specific metrics is Amazon actually looking at to build this memory? What's feeding the machine?
Right. It's not just one thing. Amazon evaluates historical ad performance through what the sources call a multi-metric framework. Several key signals tell the algorithm about your product's relevance and its appeal to shoppers.
Okay, let's break those down. Starting with click-through rate, CTR. We mentioned it already.
Yeah, CTR is fundamental. It's simply the percentage of users who click on your ad after seeing it.
Obvious relevance signal.
Exactly. A high CTR signals relevance to a search query. Our sources indicate that hitting a CTR of 0.5% or higher over 30 days.
0.5%, 30 days.
That can give you a 15 to 20% higher visibility boost compared to launching a brand new campaign with no history.
Okay, so just getting over that initial hump helps.
It does. But then, achieving a CTR of 0.8% or higher for 30-plus days.
0.8%.
Or even better, 90-plus days for what's termed elite status. That's really crucial for reaching what the sources call evergreen status.
Evergreen status. And what does that actually mean for an ad?
It means your ad tends to maintain strong positions like top of search and becomes less dependent on having to bid incredibly high all the time.
Ah, so you get more efficient.
Right, because Amazon's algorithm trusts its history of engagement. It sees that product consistently gets clicks for those search terms, so it thinks it's a highly relevant match.
How does a high CPR affect your costs then? Your cost per click?
Significantly. Campaigns that manage to sustain a CTR of 1.0% or higher for 90-plus days.
1% for 3 months?
They can observe their cost per click, their CPC, drop by as much as 40%.
40% lower CPC.
Yeah, purely because of this built-up algorithmic trust. Higher engagement leads to better efficiency, lower costs per click.
And in the grand scheme, the overall ad rank calculation, how much weight does CTR history get?
The sources say CTR history can account for up to 25% of the total ad rank.
A quarter of the rank. Okay, that's substantial.
It's a really significant factor, yeah.
Okay, so engagement, getting the click, is key. What about conversion rate? CVR, that's where the sale actually happens.
Right, CVR, percentage of clicks that turn into actual sales. This demonstrates that when people do click, they're finding what they expected, and crucially, they're buying it.
Fulfilling intent.
Exactly. Our sources state a 10% CVR is kind of a baseline. You need that just to avoid having your ads deprioritized by the system.
10% minimum.
But hitting 12% CVR or higher is what's really crucial for sustained momentum and for achieving and maintaining that evergreen status we just talked about.
12% CVR for evergreen. What kind of impact does hitting that kind of conversion rate have?
It's pretty powerful. Campaigns with a CVR of 12% or higher can achieve 30% higher ad rank.
30% higher rank.
Even if they're using 15 to 20% lower bids than their competitors.
Lower bids but higher rank because of CVR history.
Yes. Amazon heavily rewards products that convert clicks into sales efficiently. And get this, if you maintain that 12% or higher CVR for a full 180 days.
6 months of high conversion.
Your product can apparently retain 85% of its visibility even during brief inventory gaps.
That's huge for stability. Running out of stock is less damaging.
Incredibly valuable. And if you reach an elite CVR, say 15% or higher,
15% plus,
that can qualify you for a special low CPC status,
Yeah.
potentially reducing your costs by another 20 to 25%.
So CVR hits both rank and cost efficiency, maybe even more than CTR. How much is it weighted?
Sources suggest CVR can be weighted up to 30% of the ad rank calculation.
30%. Okay, slightly more than CTR. Makes sense. Amazon wants sales.
Emphasizes the importance of tuning those clicks into actual buyers, yeah.
Okay, beyond CTR and CVR, sales velocity is a term that comes up constantly. How does that fit into this memory picture?
Sales velocity is, pretty straightforward. The rate at which your units are selling over time, per day, per week, however you measure it.
Just how fast it moves.
Right. And products with higher sales volumes get significant ranking boosts. This applies to both paid and organic visibility.
How long does it take for the algorithm to notice?
Our sources suggest you need about 30 days of consistent sales growth for the algorithm to really recognize that momentum.
30 days of growth. Is there like a daily unit target?
They mentioned selling 15 units per day or more seems to be a strong signal of product appeal and algorithmic trust.
15 a day. Okay. And how does the sales velocity generated by PPC specifically impact your organic rankings? That connection seems key.
It's a critical connection, definitely.
Yeah.
The sources indicate that every $1,000 in PPC-driven sales,
$1,000 from ads.
can yield a 15 to 20% uplift in your organic rankings.
15 to 20% organic boost per 1,000 in PPC sales. That's a direct link.
It creates this positive feedback loop, a flywheel effect.
Yeah.
PPC drives sales, sales velocity boosts to organic rank. Better organic rank might lead to more sales.
And the flip side, turning ads off.
Yeah, the flip side is dramatic. Turning off ads for a well-established product can cause a massive 59% drop in organic traffic within just 2 weeks.
59% drop in organic traffic just from pausing ads?
Because you've essentially stopped feeding that sales velocity momentum that the algorithm was rewarding.
Wow.
And consistent sales also helps slow down that power law decay of your historical data we talked about earlier. Keeps your memory fresher.
Interesting. Oh, and one source mentioned something about weighting PPC sales differently.
Yes. In highly competitive niches, it seems PPC sales might be weighted 1.5 times higher than organic sales when the algorithm calculates sales velocity specifically for ad ranking purposes.
1.5x weight for PPC sales in tough categories. So paid sales can give you an outsized push for ad rank there.
Seems like it, yeah. Gives you more bang for your buck in driving that specific ad-related velocity signal.
Okay, what about bringing in traffic from outside of Amazon? External traffic.
Right, external traffic attribution. This is becoming increasingly vital based on the sources.
How so?
When you drive qualified traffic from off-Amazon sources, think platforms like TikTok, maybe your email list, or influencer promotions.
Yeah.
Amazon interprets this as validation. It's proof of external demand for your product, that people want it even outside the Amazon ecosystem.
And is there a specific target for that?
A key threshold mentioned repeatedly is achieving 15% or more of your total clicks from these off-Amazon sources.
15% external clicks, and hitting that percentage makes a big difference.
A significant one, according to the sources. Campaigns meeting that 15% threshold can gain 2 to 3 times the organic ranking uplift compared to campaigns just relying on traffic from within Amazon.
2 to 3 times the organic boost.
Yeah. And the sources even quantify this, stating that boost is equivalent in impact to spending about $15,000 in PPC.
15 grand worth of impact from hitting 15% external traffic.
That's what they suggest. Plus, external traffic can also help reset ranking decay, which is super useful if you've had, say, inventory issues.
Is there a downside?
There is a caveat. If that external traffic has low post-click engagement, like people click from TikTok but then immediately bounce off your Amazon page, it can actually trigger 18% higher CPCs.
So quality matters. Amazon sees it as less valuable traffic.
Exactly. They want engaged traffic that converts wherever it comes from.
You mentioned competitive categories earlier. Does external traffic play differently there?
It seems so. In very competitive categories, achieving 25% or more external traffic can yield an even larger boost, like 3 to 4 times the organic lift.
3 to 4x lift.
And the equivalent impact is stated as being around $25,000 in ad spend.
25K impact for 25% external in tough niches. Wow. Any tips on which external sources work best?
Well, interestingly, the sources mention nano-influencers, those with follower counts between 10,000 and 50,000.
10 to 50K followers.
They tend to yield 3 times higher conversion rates from the traffic they send to Amazon compared to using macro-influencers with huge followings.
Nano over macro for conversions. That's a specific actionable insight. What about just seeing an ad elsewhere, not clicking?
Right, that's view-through attribution, primarily for display ads. If someone sees your display ad on, say, a third-party website, and then later searches for your product on Amazon within 7 days.
Within 7 days.
That initial impression is tracked and can increase your ad rank and organic visibility by about 18%.
18% lift just from being seen elsewhere and searched later.
Yeah. Amazon is definitely valuing these cross-channel signals that indicate demand exists beyond just their platform.
This all sounds like it ties deeply into the overall health and the reputation of the seller account itself too.
Absolutely. Seller authority metrics are critical signals feeding directly into ranking memory. Think of them as your reputational currency, as one source puts it.
Reputational currency. I like that. What metrics fall under that?
The order defect rate, ODR, is a big one. Keeping it below 1% is absolutely critical.
Under 1% ODR, what happens if it goes higher?
An ODR consistently above 1% can lead to a 20 to 30% lower ad visibility. The algorithm just doesn't trust accounts with higher defect rates as much.
Okay, so avoid high ODR. What about being really good, like super low ODR?
Yes, there's a benefit there too. Sustained ODR of 0.5% or lower can actually help you gain 25 to 30% lower CPCs.
Quarter to a third lower CPC for excellent ODR.
Nice.
What else?
Inventory stability is also tied in directly. Maintaining a stockout frequency of 5% or less.
5% or fewer stockouts.
Helps preserve about 92% of your ranking momentum when you're replenishing stock.
So you don't lose as much ground.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But exceeding 5% stockouts triggers a pretty harsh 40% ranking decay.
40% decay if you stock out too often.
And if you're stocked out for 7 days or more at that higher frequency rate, you can see a 40 to 60% drop in visibility once you finally get back in stock.
Ouch. Inventory is directly linked to ad performance memory then. What about reviews?
Review velocity matters too. Getting 4 or more verified reviews per week
4 verified reviews a week
can improve your rankings by 1.8 times in competitive niches. It signals ongoing customer satisfaction.
1.8x lift from review velocity. And the overall account health rating, AHR.
Yep, the AHR score itself. A rating of 750 or higher, which Amazon calls healthy,
750 plus.
gives you a 15 to 20% ad ranking boost.
Just for being healthy.
Right. But falling below 250, unhealthy, risks ad suppression or even suspension. And achieving an AHR of 800 or higher
plus
can gain you those 25 to 30% lower CPCs, similar to the low ODR benefit.
So aiming for 800 plus AHR is a good goal for cost savings. What if your health dips but then recovers?
There's hope. Our sources say a solid 30-day period of strong improvement, getting ODR down to 0.3% or less and AHR up above 700 can restore 80 to 90% of your previous visibility.
Okay, so recovery is possible with focused effort. Reputational currency indeed. What about the things customers do on the product page itself beyond just clicking and buying? Are those tracked for memory?
Yes, definitely. Amazon synthesizes other behavioral signals beyond just CTR and CVR to feed this memory.
Like what?
Things like session duration, how long users actually spend on your product detail page. Aiming for 2.5 minutes or more is mentioned.
2.5 minutes.
Also, repeat purchase rate are customers buying your product again. Aiming for 25% or more repeat purchases within 180 days is a target.
Quarter repeat buyers in 6 months.
Cart addition rate, how often people add your product to their cart even if they don't buy immediately. Aiming for 8% or more in 30 days.
8% add to cart.
And review velocity, which we just mentioned. These, along with CTR, CVR, and that external traffic share, form a much more multifaceted evaluation of true customer engagement with your product.
And weaving all these different metrics together consistently over time, that builds historical consistency, right?
Precisely. Maintaining strong performance across these key metrics over the long haul, especially achieving that evergreen status, the 0.8% CTR, 12% CVR for 90-plus days, that preserves the algorithm's preference for your product.
And reduces your dependency on just throwing high bids at it.
Exactly. You build algorithmic equity.
Okay, so we know what ranking memory is, how long it lasts, how it's weighted, and all the key metrics feeding it. How does Amazon's system actually process all this data? What's happening behind the curtain?
Right. It's a pretty sophisticated technical architecture, as you'd expect. At the absolute core is the Amazon Standard Identification Number for each product.
The ASIN is the key.
It's the linchpin. Every single event, a click, an impression, a conversion, view-throughs for a specific product gets tagged with its ASIN. This is what allows Amazon to aggregate performance data across all the different campaigns and ad types you might be running for that single product. It all rolls up.
So performance isn't just stuck in one campaign. It all pools at the product ASIN level.
Exactly. That ASIN level view is crucial. This data flows through massive data pipelines, gets stored in powerful distributed databases like AWS DynamoDB or S3.
Okay.
Systems work behind the scenes to sync these ASIN level metrics frequently. The sources mentioned maybe every 15-30 minutes via APIs.
Near real-time updates.
Pretty close. And Amazon tracks attribution across different touchpoints, including that view-through attribution from display ads we talked about, rolling all this up to the ASIN level. You see some of this aggregated data surfaced in things like brand analytics reports.
And this aggregated ASIN level data is what the ranking algorithms actually use.
Yes, precisely. That ASIN level historical performance data is the fuel for Amazon's algorithms, like the attain system they use for ranking, to compute that ranking memory. And they employ some pretty advanced machine learning models to do it.
Okay, ML models. Like what kind?
Well, the sources mention a few types. For instance, models like LambdaMART, which uses gradient-boosted decision trees,
Okay.
act as a core learning-to-rank engine. It optimizes ad rankings using that historical CTR, CVR, sales velocity data, assigning higher weights to ads with sustained high performance. It's trying to balance multiple objectives, like driving sales, maximizing profit, even considering inventory levels.
So that's for the core ranking. What else?
They also use transformer-based models like RankFormer or BERT. These are more about contextual understanding.
Understanding language.
Yeah, BERT helps process natural language search queries and product titles to align the semantic intent what the shopper means with products that have historically shown strong engagement for similar meanings. This helps improve relevance, especially for keyword expansion. RankFormer evaluates the quality of whole lists of search results.
Okay, what about testing new things or adjusting on the fly?
That's where models based on reinforcement learning come in, like contextual multi-armed bandits.
Multi-armed bandits. Sounds like Vegas.
Yeah, it's about balancing exploration and exploitation. These models dynamically adjust which ads get shown and what bids are used. They balance showing your proven high-performing ads, exploitation, with testing out new ones or different placements, exploration, to refresh the system's memory.
So they help avoid getting stale.
Exactly. And they help reduce those cold start penalties for brand new products by about 30–40%, giving them a better chance. They're also key in rewarding ads that drive that valuable external traffic.
Any other ML models involved?
Yep. Sources mention neural collaborative filtering, or NCF. This is used more for personalization.
Personalizing ads.
Yeah, predicting ad relevance based on an individual user's past behavior history, their purchases, what's on their wish list. This apparently achieves 19% higher CTR for returning customers. It also integrates that power law decay model to handle the time factor.
19% CTR lift from personalization. Wow.
Then there are deep Q networks, DQN. These are used to optimize bids based on real-time factors like current stock levels or competitor activity.
Real-time bid optimization.
Right. They can automatically pause ads during stockouts to preserve relevance history and reduce the recovery time by 50% later. They also adjust bids during peak shopping hours, for example.
And privacy, with all this data.
They mention federated learning models. These allow aggregating performance signals from lots of decentralized user data, even across global markets, while maintaining privacy compliance, like with GDPR. This helps improve efficiency, for example, when launching in new regions, by about 40%.
Okay, so it's a really complex AI system juggling historical trust, real-time context, personalization, and exploration.
Precisely. It uses that power law decay model for the historical component. Remember, about 60% weight on recent data while constantly incorporating real-time signals like inventory levels, competitor presence, external traffic to dynamically adjust decisions about ad ranking and bidding.
The AI is really the conductor of this whole orchestra.
It's crucial in synthesizing all this data, forecasting performance, identifying patterns, optimizing bids and placements, and even detecting anomalies to figure out how that ranking memory should influence current decisions.
Speaking of anomalies, what if there's something weird in the data? Like a sudden massive spike in clicks that looks like bots, or a sudden unexplained drop in conversions? How does the system handle that?
Yeah, good question. Amazon has systems specifically designed to detect these anomalies and unusual patterns.
Like what?
There's an AI system called SLIDR that stands for Slice-Level Detection of Robots.
SLIDR, okay.
It uses deep learning to identify invalid clicks and fraudulent activity, like those crazy CTR spikes, maybe over 300%. It analyzes traffic across different slices, like device type, region, etc., and can often spot this stuff within 48 hours.
And what happens then?
You can automatically freeze suspicious campaigns to prevent further damage or wasted spend while it's investigated.
Okay, so fraud detection is built in. Any other ways they spot weird patterns?
They use other ML models too. Things like random cut forest, RCF, to detect outlier metrics, maybe like your CVR suddenly dropping more than 20%, XGBoost models to classify anomalies in sales or inventory data, and deep neural networks to process different kinds of data together to distinguish genuine engagement from noise.
And how does finding an anomaly affect the ranking memory itself? Does one bad day ruin months of history?
Not necessarily. That power law decay model actually helps limit the long-term impact of short-term anomalies. Their influence naturally fades over time.
Okay, that's good.
Also, if a product has already achieved that strong evergreen status, built up a lot of historical trust, it's generally less likely to be severely penalized by just a brief anomaly. Sources suggest it might retain 60–80% of its visibility through a short blip.
So history provides some resilience.
It does. Plus, those automated bid pauses we mentioned can also help reset memory influence for ads that suddenly start performing really poorly. And for external traffic, they validate it checking things like IP addresses and bounce rates. Campaigns with too much invalid external traffic, say 15% or more, can lose some of those organic boosts we talked about. Anomalous view-through impressions are also excluded.
This whole system sounds absolutely massive in terms of the data involved.
The scale is staggering, yeah.
Yeah.
Maintaining ranking memory for millions, maybe hundreds of millions of products generates an enormous volume of data. One source estimated 100, 200 gigabytes per day, just for 100 million products.
100 to 200 gigs a day.
Which means storing that data for the full 180-day influence period requires petabytes of storage, maybe 18 to 36 petabytes.
Petabytes. That requires some serious infrastructure.
Definitely. It leverages Amazon's own cloud services, extensively distributed databases like DynamoDB and S3, streaming pipelines like Kinesis, handling maybe over 1 trillion events daily.
Trillion events a day.
Yeah. ML training and inference running on specialized chips like GPUs and AWS Inferentia, distributed computing frameworks like EMR for batch processing, global networks, auto-scaling everywhere. It's a huge operation.
And how do they keep all that data accurate? Prevent corruption?
Data accuracy is obviously paramount. They use multiple layers. Cryptographic integrity checks like checksums and hashing SHA-256, things like that.
Okay.
Redundancy across different data centers, using techniques like erasure coding to rebuild corrupted data, often within 12, 18 hours. ML-based anomaly detection and correction systems flag deviations. They use decay-aware validation logic. Strict access controls, immutable logging, and scheduled integrity scans are all part of it too.
So a lot goes into just maintaining the integrity of this memory data.
A huge amount, yeah. It has to be reliable for the algorithms to work properly.
Okay, we've covered the definitions, the metrics, the complex processing. Now let's talk about what actually influences this ranking memory day to day. What causes it to build up, or maybe more importantly, what causes it to decay?
Right. Ranking memory isn't static at all. It's constantly being influenced. And one of the most significant factors that can cause it to decay is pausing your campaigns for extended periods.
Pausing campaigns hurts your memory. How specifically?
Well, first, and maybe most obviously, you lose sales velocity from those ads. Halting PPC sales directly reduces your overall sales rate, which is a key input.
We saw that link earlier.
Yeah, and for established products, remember that stat. Simply disabling ads can lead to that dramatic 59% drop in organic traffic within 14 days because you've cut off that sales momentum feed. Ads contribute about 15–20% of those organic boosts via velocity.
Okay, so pausing kills the velocity boost. What else?
Second, pausing actively accelerates the decay of that valuable recent performance data, the stuff weighted most heavily.
It decays faster if paused.
The influence drops off quicker, yeah. A short pause, maybe 7 to 14 days, might cause around 20% visibility loss, which is often recoverable when you turn it back on.
20% loss for a week or two. Pause. Okay.
But a longer pause, say 30 days or more, that can lead to roughly 50% decay in the influence of your historical CTR and CVR.
Half the influence gone after a month pause?
Potentially. And that hard-earned Evergreen status, it can be revoked, which means when you turn ads back on, you might be forced to use 2 to 3 times higher bids just to start regaining your previous ranking power.
2 to 3x higher bids.
And if you pause for 90 days or more, your historical data influence becomes almost negligible. You're practically starting over from an algorithmic memory perspective.
Wow. So extended pauses are incredibly costly in terms of lost memory. What's the recovery process like when you finally reactivate?
It's challenging. When you reactivate, your ads often re-enter a kind of learning phase with limited impressions initially.
Back to square one, almost.
Feels like it sometimes. And your competitors might have increased their bids while you were gone, driving up the CPCs in your market by maybe 30–50% in saturated niches.
So it's more expensive to get back in.
Often, yeah. You have to actively work to rebuild those key metrics, getting your CTR back above 0.5%, CVR above 10%, and sustaining that for 30+ days just to start regaining algorithmic trust.
Is there data on how long recovery takes?
One case study mentioned in the sources showed a campaign that was paused for 60 days.
2 months pause.
It needed 45 days and 150% of its original budget just to restore 80% of its previous visibility.
45 days and 1.5 times the budget just to get back most of the way. That's a steep price for pausing.
It really highlights the cost of losing that momentum in memory.
Okay, so avoid long pauses if possible. What about starting poorly right out of the gate? If a campaign launch just tanks?
Yeah, poor initial campaign performance can cause what the sources term algorithmic scarring. It can create lasting negative effects on your ranking memory.
Algorithmic scarring? That sounds bad.
It implies the system remembers that poor start. For example, an initial CTR below 0.3% might mean you get 30–50% fewer impressions over the long run, even if CTR improves later.
30 to 50% fewer impressions long term.
That's what's suggested. Or an initial CVR Below 5% can lead to 20-25% higher CPCs down the line. Failing to get at least 10 sales in the first 14 days of a launch can mean 40% longer recovery times if performance picks up.
10 sales in 2 weeks seems like a key early hurdle.
It appears to be an important early signal. And remember, because that first 30 days is weighted so heavily around 60%,
Right.
poor performance early on, like, say, a dismal 0.2% CTR in the first week, can depress your ad rank and reduce future impressions by as much as 35% for the full 180-day memory window.
35% impression reduction for 180 days from one bad week.
That's the potential impact of that algorithmic scarring. Even if performance improves dramatically later, that initial negative signal lingers in the weighted history.
And competitively.
Competitively, new products launching with poor starts in crowded, saturated niches can face 40-60% higher CPCs compared to established competitors who already have positive ranking memory built up.
40 to 60% higher entry cost. Ouch.
It makes it much harder to gain traction.
So getting it right early or recovering very quickly from a poor start is absolutely crucial for building positive memory.
It really sets the trajectory for that 180-day memory cycle.
Okay, we touched on seller account health earlier, but let's revisit how deeply it influences this ranking memory.
Very deeply. The sources state that the attain algorithm ties somewhere between 30 to 60% of ranking memory directly to account-level metrics.
30 to 60%, that's huge.
It shows how much Amazon values overall seller reliability. So maintaining that ODR below 1% and AHR at 750 or higher, healthy, gives you those 15-20% ranking boosts.
In the negative side.
ODR going over 1% or AHR dropping below 250, unhealthy, leads to that 20-30% lower visibility or even suspension risk.
But sustained excellence helps too.
Yes, sustained ODR at 0.5% or less and AHR at 800 or higher can gain you those 25-30% lower CPCs. That algorithmic trust pays off in efficiency.
And how long does account health history stick around?
Account health data is also retained in the memory system for up to 180 days. But remember that recovery point. Improving your metrics significantly for just 30 days can restore 80-90% of lost visibility due to past health issues.
Okay, so account health is a major long-term factor. What happens if the account ownership changes, like if a business is sold?
Good question. Changing account ownership actually disrupts the ranking memory significantly, according to the sources.
How so?
Because a large chunk of that memory, maybe 30-60%, is tied to account-specific metrics, which effectively reset with a new owner.
Reset, like ODR.
Exactly. ODR goes back to 0 for the new owner. Historical sales velocity associated with the old account can lose 40-60% of its weight in the memory calculation. And any PPC Evergreen status achieved by the previous owner is usually revoked.
Evergreen status gone. Wow.
Yeah, the new owner typically needs 30-45 days of strong performance under their own account to rebuild that status.
So a lot of the account level memory gets wiped. What about product-specific stuff?
Some product-specific history can be preserved, assuming the ASIN itself isn't relisted or changed. Things like the product's review history generally carry over. Organic rank momentum might preserve 30-50% if inventory remains stable through the transition, and external traffic signals tied to the AS might retain some partial equity too.
Okay, so AS level history is more resilient than account level history during an ownership change.
That seems to be the case, yeah.
Does ranking memory behave exactly the same way in every single product category on Amazon?
No. Definitely not. Category dynamics matter quite a bit.
How do they differ?
Well, the rate of decay for historical data can vary. Sources suggest it might be faster. Maybe influence only lasts strongly for 30-60 days for some factors in really high-velocity categories like electronics.
Faster decay in fast-moving categories.
Right, compared to potentially longer influence, maybe 90-120 days, in slower-moving categories like, say, home and kitchen.
Okay. What about competition levels?
Competition makes a huge difference. Really saturated markets, like maybe phone cases or supplements, often require much higher performance thresholds just to sustain memory. You might need a 1.2 per CPR and a 15% CVR consistently, whereas less competitive niches might maintain memory with lower numbers.
So the bar is higher in crowded spaces.
Exactly. And the attain algorithm itself dynamically weights different factors based on the category.
How so?
For example, electronics might have a steeper weekly decay rate, maybe 12%, and place higher weighting on CTR, like 25%, and CVR, 30%, whereas home and garden might have a slower decay, maybe 5% weekly, and weight CTR less, 15%, but CVR similarly, 30%. Grocery could have even slower decay, 3% weekly, and weight CTR even less, 10%, but CVR more, 35%.
So the algorithm adapts its memory calculations based on typical category behavior.
It seems to be tuned to category specifics, yeah.
How does this PPC ranking memory interact with organic search rankings? We touched on the velocity link, but is it deeper?
It's definitely a symbiotic relationship, a two-way street. PPC ranking memory, built through strong ad performance, directly influences organic positions.
Wow.
Primarily through that algorithmic trust signal and the sales velocity contribution. Achieving evergreen status from PPC helps preserve your organic ranks for those keywords too.
So good PPC performance protects organic.
To an extent, yes. And we know PPC-driven sales boost overall sales velocity, which lifts organic rank. Conversely, products with a strong organic sales history can actually retain 70–80% of their visibility even during temporary PPC pauses because they still have that baseline velocity.
Okay, so strong organic provides a buffer if PPC stops. What about keywords?
High-performing PPC keywords, especially exact match keywords that convert well, effectively train Amazon's search algorithm. This improves your organic rankings not just for those exact terms, but potentially for related terms too, thanks to models like BERT understanding semantics.
So PPC performance teaches the organic algorithm what you're relevant for.
Exactly. Paid history acts like algorithmic collateral, as one source put it, for your organic keyword equity.
Algorithmic collateral. Interesting phrase. So organic sales help, but paid sales have a specific weight in ad rank memory.
Right. While organic sales contribute to overall sales velocity, which helps everywhere, the paid sales history specifically impacts the ad rank calculations and those algorithmic trust metrics built within the advertising system, like your historical CTR and CVR, for specific keywords. They're related but distinct inputs.
Got it. And we discussed external traffic earlier driving boosts. How does it specifically amplify this ranking memory effect?
Bringing in external traffic acts as a powerful amplifier because it signals that cross-channel demand we talked about. The attain algorithm seems to prioritize products demonstrating this broader appeal.
So external demand is higher priority.
Seems like it. Traffic from platforms like TikTok, Instagram, influencers, especially if it converts well on Amazon. One source mentioned 58.6% conversion rate for TikTok Instagram traffic in a study.
58.6% CVR from social. That's incredibly high.
It can be for highly targeted campaigns. This kind of high-converting external traffic rapidly boosts sales velocity and contributes strongly to your CVR history, amplifying the positive signals going into ranking memory.
So it speeds things up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This synergy from external traffic helps you achieve evergreen status faster and can expand your perceived keyword relevance more quickly than relying solely on Amazon activity.
And just to confirm, Amazon isn't looking at sales data from outside Amazon, right?
Correct. The sources are clear. Amazon doesn't directly use sales data from your Shopify store or other off-Amazon channels.
Yeah.
But it absolutely rewards the traffic and subsequent conversions driven to Amazon via its attribution system. That's the key linkage.
Okay, this is incredibly detailed. So understanding all these mechanics, what memory is, what feeds it, what decays it, how it interacts, what's the real-world impact, how do we measure this stuff, and most importantly, what are the strategic implications? How do we use this knowledge?
All right, let's get practical. The impact is incredibly direct. Your past performance, stored in ranking memory, directly dictates your future advertising costs and your ad placements.
Past dictates future. How specifically on costs?
We mentioned evergreen status. Achieving that through sustained high performance can reduce your CPC by 20–25%.
20 to 25% cheaper clicks.
The lead performance, like really high CTR, 1.2%, and CVR, 15%, can potentially reduce CPC by 40–50%.
40 to 50% savings for top tier.
But the flip side is true too. Poor performance history, like a consistently low CTR below 0.3%, can increase your CPC by 30–50%. Low CVR, 5%, can increase it 20–25%.
So poor history makes everything more expensive.
Significantly. And remember the inventory impact.
Yeah.
Stocking out too often, 5% frequency, can cause a 40% future ad rank penalty, potentially requiring 200–300% higher bids just to get visibility back after restocking.
2 to 300% bid spikes post-stocked out penalty. Ouch. What about bid efficiency generally?
Winners with strong history, say 90+ days of good performance, can often retain 85% of their visibility even during temporary bid pauses or reductions. They might only need 15–20% lower bids than competitors to hold rank.
History makes you resilient to bid changes.
Exactly. Meanwhile, new sellers lacking that history face those 40–60% higher CPCs just to enter the auction because they have no established algorithmic trust.
And placements, where your ads show up.
High historical CVR is particularly powerful here. It allows your ads to sometimes outrank competitors who might even have higher bids, especially for those high-intent placements like top of search or prime spots on product detail pages. Conversion history signals relevance very strongly.
Okay, so the impacts are clear. How do we know if ranking memory is currently helping or hurting a specific product? What are the signs?
Good question. Signs it's helping include achieving that evergreen status, meaning you retain 60–80% visibility even with lower bids and see 20–25% lower CPCs.
Yeah.
Seeing organic sales consistently grow after running PPC campaigns, organic income is 50% of total sales. Seeing your external traffic driving those 2–3x organic ranking boosts. Having stable inventory, 5% stockouts, and quick recovery after any stockouts, like within 7 days. These suggest positive memory is working for you.
And the signs it's hurting you?
Signs that might be hurting include seeing your visibility decay even when your bids are stable, suggesting recent performance data is low, getting fraud flags triggered by things like those 300% CTR spikes from SLIDR,
Right.
over-reliance on PPC, like if 70% of your sales are consistently coming just from ads, and negative customer experiences reflected in account health, like an ODR, consistently over 1%. These suggest negative memory or decaying memory might be dragging you down.
Got it. So what specific metrics should sellers be tracking to monitor their ranking memory performance beyond just looking at ACS?
Yeah, ACS is important, but it doesn't tell the whole story of memory building. You need to track the inputs.
Right.
Like your 30-day and 90-day average CTR, really aiming for that 0.8% or higher. Your CVR aiming for 12% or higher.
Okay, CTR, CVR.
Your sales velocity. Are you hitting or exceeding 15 units per day consistently? Your keyword rankings. Are you holding top 3 positions for your most important high CTR keywords?
Velocity rank.
Your organic sales percentage, is it growing towards that 50% or higher target? Your inventory stability, keeping stockouts below 5%.
Inventory.
Your customer review metrics, aiming for 4.5 stars or higher and getting those 4+ verified reviews per week. Your impression share, are you showing up consistently, aiming for 70% or more on key terms? And finally, your return on ad spend, ROAS, aiming for 4x or higher as a benchmark.
Okay, that's a comprehensive dashboard. How do you measure the impact of this memory on costs specifically?
You need to correlate trends. Analyze your ACS and CPC trends over time and see how they correlate with changes in your 30–90-day historical metrics, like CTR and CVR.
Look for connections.
Exactly. Regression analysis could show something like a 10% increase in our 90-day CDR, correlated with a 12% reduction in ACS. You can also do event-based analysis, compare the CPC spike needed to recover from a stockout for a product with strong memory versus one with weak memory. The spike should be smaller for the one with good history.
Comparing recovery resilience.
Right. You could even A/B test similar products launched differently to build different history profiles. Use tools like Amazon Attribution to track external traffic impact, pull data from Seller Central reports, search term, portfolio reports, and leverage third-party platforms like Sellix, Helium 10, or Jungle Scout for deeper analysis. And always factor in those decay rates. Remember the 60% weight on recent performance.
What about reporting frameworks to pull this all together?
You need to combine multiple sources. Use Amazon's native reports, search term, performance over time, placement reports. Consider advanced analytics if you can, like using AWS Forecast for sales or CTR prediction or SageMaker to identify patterns in your historical data.
More advanced tools.
Maybe custom SQL queries if you have a data warehouse. Definitely integrate data from external traffic tools like Amazon Attribution. And visualize everything in dashboards using tools like DataBox or the dashboards in Jungle Scout Helium 10. Critically, you need to incorporate that SLIDR data, fraud flags, and your inventory data into the analysis.
Because account health and inventory are part of that trust signal.
Exactly. They directly impact algorithmic perception and memory.
This really implies that sellers need to adjust how they define success, doesn't it? Moving beyond just short-term ACUS.
Absolutely. Your goals have to balance the short-term costs with the long-term value of building this algorithmic equity.
So what does that shift look like?
It means shifting focus. Maybe accepting a higher ACS, say 30–40%, during a product launch phase, specifically to build those crucial initial metrics, CPR, CVR, sales velocity.
Invest early for memory.
Right. With the goal of reducing ACS down to maybe 15–20% later, once that ranking memory solidifies and provides efficiency. Aiming for a healthy total ACS, including organic sales of maybe 10% or less long-term.
Prioritizing the memory inputs.
Yes. Explicitly prioritize achieving and sustaining those high CTR, 0.8%, CVR 12%, and sales velocity 15 units day thresholds that are key for ranking memory and evergreen status.
What about other metrics?
Include algorithmic trust metrics directly in your goals, track inventory performance index, IPI, aiming for 500+ state, and keep ODR below 1%. Make attributed external clicks a core success metric too, aiming for 15% and correlating it with organic boosts and lower CPCs.
Okay, so measure and value the things that build memory. Strategically then, how do we approach building and leveraging this memory? Let's start with new sellers.
For new sellers, it's all about laying a strong foundation. Focus on pre-launch prep, high-quality listing, getting initial reviews through Vine, then use phased campaigns.
Phased campaigns.
Yeah, maybe start with aggressive auto and exact match campaigns to generate initial data and sales quickly. Expand to broader match types later, use strategic bids, maybe boost bids during peak hours, or use placement multipliers aggressively early on.
And tolerate high ACOs.
Yes, be prepared to tolerate a higher ACOS, maybe 40–60% for the first 60 days, specifically to establish those baseline metrics and velocity. Integrate external traffic from day one if possible. Ensure inventory stability above all else. And be consistent. The goal is to build that algorithmic trust and hit those evergreen thresholds, 0.8% TTR, 12% CVR, within the first 90+ days.
Okay, that's the foundational approach. What if you want to accelerate memory building? Go faster.
The sources suggest some aggressive tactics for acceleration, using very aggressive bid strategies like 300–500% top of search bid multipliers initially.
300 to 500% boosts, wow.
Yeah, really pushing for visibility, focusing on targeted keyword optimization, dominating exact match, maybe targeting competitor A-wins with the 110–120% of your normal CPC.
Aggressive targeting.
Frequent content refreshes, swapping images or video every 21 days. Testing titles and bullets constantly to combat CTR decay. Strong external traffic integration using Amazon attribution and maybe influencers. Maintaining rock-solid inventory and pricing stability, using dynamic repricing maybe. Leveraging sponsored brands ads for broader brand equity signals. And using analytics-driven bid adjustments, maybe predictive tools.
How much faster can this make things?
The claim is these tactics can potentially compress that typical 90-day memory building cycle down to just 30–45 days.
Cut the time in half or more. Intense.
Yeah.
What about the flip side? Handling poor history. If you've got algorithmic scarring, how do you recover?
Recovery from poor history is tough, and the sources suggest it might even involve drastic steps like completely relaunching the ASIN or isolating it within your portfolio.
Relaunching the product, that's extreme.
It is, but sometimes seen as necessary if the negative memory is too strong. Short of that, recovery requires aggressive metric optimization. Using bid multipliers heavily, driving significant external traffic, maybe 20–30% of clicks, to try and reset sales velocity signals. Overhauling content completely, A/B testing creatives almost weekly.
How long and costly is recovery?
Recovery could easily take 30–45 days of intense effort and might require 2 to 3 times the initial investment that building positive memory would have taken in the first place.
So much better to get it right the first time.
Absolutely. Long-term planning is key. Cultivate that algorithm trust by maintaining evergreen status, actively manage decay, ensure operational stability, especially inventory. Use balanced budget and bid architectures, like using portfolios, making gradual reductions, not sudden pauses. Leverage external traffic and brand equity continuously, and adapt to your specific category's dynamics.
What's the ultimate goal?
The ultimate goal, based on these sources, is a sort of 180-day roadmap leading to a state where a high share of your sales comes from organic traffic and your dependency on high PPC bids is significantly reduced because your ranking memory is doing the heavy lifting.
So ranking memory becomes a strategic asset for sustaining market share.
Exactly. It acts as a moat. It gives algorithmic preference to proven performers, evergreen status. It reduces your reliance on PPC spend through lower CPCs. It creates barriers for new entrants who face higher CPCs. And it supports resilience against inventory hiccups or operational issues.
Can new competitors still challenge established players who have this memory advantage?
It's definitely harder for newcomers. They face those 40–60% higher CPCs, and incumbents with evergreen status have that 60–80% visibility retention advantage.
So the deck is stacked against them.
It is, but not insurmountably. New competitors can use tactics like driving significant external traffic, hitting 15% clicks for that 2–3x organic boost. Focusing on niche, long-tail keywords where incumbents might be weaker, leveraging BERT semantic matching. Running aggressive PPC bid sprints during key periods. And being agile with content, refreshing creative every 21–30 days. And inventory, Maintaining deep FBA buffers may be 120, 150 days.
So disruption is possible with the right strategy.
Yes, the timeline for building initial trust can be compressed, hit thresholds in 30 days, maybe achieve evergreen in 60 days with aggressive, smart tactics. You can chip away at the incumbent's advantage.
Okay, last piece on strategy testing. What methodologies work best when you need to optimize campaigns without damaging the ranking memory you've built?
Good point. Standard A/B testing can sometimes hurt by splitting traffic away from your proven performer for too long. The sources recommend alternatives, like multi-armed bandit MAB testing. This dynamically allocates more traffic to the variations that start performing better, preserving overall campaign CTR/CVR. Sources suggest it preserves 85–90% of memory compared to standard A/B tests and can reduce wasted spend by 30–50%.
MAs for efficiency and memory preservation. What else?
Phased sequential testing. This involves distinct stages: an addition phase, 1 to 7 days, with aggressive bids to test new elements quickly, a validation phase, 8–14 days to refine winners, and a lock-in phase, 15+ days, migrating learnings to evergreen campaigns. This allows for rapid testing while preserving maybe 70–80% of memory.
Faster iteration.
Right. Also, incrementality-focused testing. This means targeting keywords where your organic rank is low or scroll depth is high, and proving that ads are driving at least 15% attributable sales lift. Using Amazon attribution to measure external traffic impact also fits here, preserving 90–95% of memory because it focuses on additive value.
Focus on where ads make the biggest difference.
Exactly. And don't forget creative refresh cycles. Regularly rotating images, titles, maybe every 21–45 days, specifically to combat natural CTR decay, which can drop 19% over 60 days. Tracking metrics like time in view or scroll depth for creatives can help here.
Keep creative fresh.
And finally, using predictive analytics tools like AWS Forecast or dynamic creative optimization platforms for AI-driven forecasting and creative testing. These can help optimize biz and creative choices proactively to reduce ACOS while maintaining those crucial performance metrics that feed memory.
Okay, that's a wealth of strategic and tactical information grounded in how this memory system works. This has been incredibly insightful. Finally, let's just briefly touch on the broader implications, the ethical and business practice considerations mentioned in the sources.
Yes, it's important to acknowledge those. There are definitely ethical considerations surrounding Amazon's use of historical data in ranking decisions. How much power should past performance have over current visibility?
And transparency.
Exactly. Questions arise about how transparent Amazon should be about the specific ranking memory factors and their weightings, especially since they can change and vary by category.
What of fairness?
Fairness concerns are significant, particularly regarding new sellers who face that inherent disadvantage, those 40–60% higher CPCs, simply because they lack historical ranking memory compared to established players. Is that a level playing field?
It's a challenge for sure.
Amazon also has this constant balancing act, rewarding advertisers for historical performance versus ensuring the best, most relevant products are shown to customers right now, regardless of history.
Customer experience versus advertiser history.
Right. And the sources mention the possibility of future regulatory oversight for these powerful algorithmic ranking memory systems, given their impact.
How does it affect small businesses?
It directly impacts small business competitiveness. Building and maintaining ranking memory requires sophistication, resources, and often significant upfront investment, which can be harder for smaller sellers.
And consumer protection.
There are potential consumer protection issues, too, related to which products get amplified based on historical ad performance versus maybe inherent product quality or value.
And for sellers trying to build memory.
For businesses, the challenge is approaching ranking memory building strategically, but also ethically, avoiding tactics that might trigger fraud detection systems like SLIDR, focusing on genuine customer value.
It's a complex ecosystem with significant implications for everyone involved: Amazon, sellers, and customers. What do the sources suggest the future holds for these ranking memory systems? Where is this heading?
The clear indication is that these systems will continue to evolve rapidly, driven primarily by advancements in artificial intelligence.
More AI, how?
Future AI will likely enhance the semantic and intent-driven aspects of ranking. Using advanced large language models, maybe building on things like BERT or newer internal models Amazon develops like Cosmo or Rufus's, to understand queries and product relevance at a much deeper level, moving beyond simple keyword matching.
Deeper understanding of intent.
Expect more real-time predictive analytics too. Tools may be integrated into the DSP, forecasting conversion likelihood or sales velocity hourly, and adjusting rankings dynamically. This could mean less reliance only on historical data, as AI predicts future performance better. AI might predict velocity changes and proactively mitigate decay.
More predictive, less purely historical.
Potentially, yeah. AI will also likely deepen the integration of external traffic signals and cross-platform synergy, perhaps correlating influencer engagement quality with long-term algorithmic trust signals.
Connecting off Amazon activity even more tightly. Any other big shifts?
Future algorithms, maybe a rumored A11 system, might start incorporating more nuanced behavioral signals, potentially even trying to gauge emotional responses, though that's obviously more speculative and raises more ethical questions.
Behavioral and emotional analytics.
Wow, AI will definitely continue to enhance the trust and authenticity metrics, improving fraud detection with systems like SLIDR, maybe using LLMs to validate listing content quality.
Better policing of the system.
And expect hyper-personalization to increase, using those federated learning models, perhaps, to personalize rankings based on individual shopper histories even more finely, while still aiming to comply with privacy regulations.
So even more sophisticated algorithms, more real-time adaptation, deeper personalization, and tighter integration of external signals.
Exactly. The algorithmic mind of Amazon and its memory is constantly learning, evolving, and getting more complex.
Okay, let's try and wrap our heads around this one last time. We've taken a really deep dive into Amazon's ranking memory mechanisms today.
We sure have.
We've seen how critical metrics like CTR, CVR, sales velocity, your account health, and even external traffic attribution are constantly feeding the system, essentially creating algorithmic equity for your product over time.
That equity is key. It's built, not just bought instantly.
We discussed how factors like pausing campaigns, poor initial performance, or inventory issues can cause this memory to decay, while consistency, strong external signals, and solid account health build it up.
And how it varies by category, interacts with organic rank. It's interconnected.
We touched on the incredible technical sophistication behind it, the massive data processing, the complex AI and machine learning models balancing recent performance with historical trust.
LambdaMART, BERT, multi-arm bandits, DQNs, lots of moving parts.
And we covered the critical impact this memory has on your bottom line, your advertising costs, your visibility, your bid efficiency, and ultimately your long-term success and market share on Amazon.
Ranking memory isn't just some abstract concept or a temporary boost. It really is the foundation of sustained visibility and efficiency on Amazon. It's about building long-term authority and trustworthiness in the eyes of Amazon's algorithms.
Moving beyond just winning the next click or the next sale.
Exactly. It's about proving relevance and value consistently over time.
That powerful concept of algorithmic equity really resonates. Okay, so here's a provocative thought for you, our listeners, to consider as we close out this deep dive. As Amazon's AI systems become even more sophisticated, potentially understanding nuanced intent, predicting future behavior, and adapting in real time even faster. How will this change the fundamental rules of building and preserving that crucial ranking memory? And what entirely new strategies might become essential to ensure your products remain relevant and visible in its constantly evolving algorithmic mind?
That's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it?
Something for you to definitely think about as you navigate the ever-changing landscape of the Amazon marketplace.